right. Well, thank you, Aru, for being here today to talk with our data science students. And I would love to start with having you introduce yourself, when you graduated, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I graduated from the data science program in December of 2023, so pretty recently. And now I am working with Navy Federal Credit Union as the business operations analyst with their branch operations risk office. So a lot of my day to day is like data visualization, data analysis, building queries, and all that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for being here. I
Yeah.
have basically four questions for you. And let's go ahead and get started with the first question. What process did you use to find your summer internship? Because I believe you did an internship before becoming a full-time
Yes.
employee. So what
Yeah.
process did you use? What sites? What networking? Give us a sense of what you did.
Yeah. So it was back in 2022 during my first semester of my grad school. So I had been really, updating my LinkedIn profile, really staying active and engaging with alums, engaging with people in the field. I was new to the field and not just like, hey, if you know of an internship, please refer me, but more like, hey, something that you posted was really interesting. Tell me more. Or, hey, your job title sounds cool. Tell me more. So when I do reach out about an internship, if needed, it's not as cold. It's not as, hey, stranger, like refer me to an internship. So I was really, putting myself out there and reaching out to recruiters and alums and people in the field. So I would say LinkedIn was my go-to at the time. I also had the, open to work on my profile. And this whole time while I was also networking and updating my profile in general, like anything that I had done in undergrad, internships was there on my profile in one way or another. And then one day, like a recruiter from I think it's like the early career partner program at Navy Federal, he reached out to me, just wanting to gauge my internship for a summer internship. I shared my resume and it was, I was able to set up a phone interview with him. And then shortly after that, I had a video call with my current team leaders and supervisors, and I was offered a summer internship. So I worked all summer, and then after that, it was a year-long internship, and then upon graduation, I was offered a full-time role.
Terrific. I love how much reaching out you did. That's great.
Yes, a lot.
That's wonderful. And I think the idea of the reaching out not being transactional, but being really out of curiosity and interest in what people are doing is great.
Yeah, people always want to talk about themselves, so give them a reason to, and they would love to chat. So, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so you talked a little bit about the resume, not too much, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you prepared your materials for that or other applications, any kind of services you used, and any process that you used.
Yeah. I heavily relied on you and like, the career services that our data science program has to not just like review my resume, but also my LinkedIn profile because I was really using it. And what's missing, what's in it that I can enhance everything. And I was always in a habit to keep my resume up to date as much as possible. But what meeting with the career services did for me was, when you meet with them, or with you, it's not like, oh, fix this, fix that. It's like, oh, you mentioned this, what does that mean? Tell me more. Like you ask those questions and it really pushes me or pushed me to think and yeah, like what did I do or how can I explain it better? So it really allowed me to think about my experience, think about how I would explain it to someone who has no idea where I'm coming from, and answer those questions in detail, answer those questions again and again, because the more times you go, the more times you're repeating yourself. And it really helps when you're talking to a recruiter, then, or anyone really, when you're networking, you already know what you want to say. You know what are the points that you want to hit on. And even if there are parts of your experience that you don't know if you should share or not, or how to share it, those sessions with the career services really helps you just have like a not like a dialogue, but like have something to say, like to explain. So that really helped me when I was preparing for interviews, preparing to like apply to positions. Yes, like my LinkedIn profile was more enhanced and my resume was more enhanced, but just I was more prepared overall. So that I would say really helped.
And did you tailor your resume to specific positions? Were you able to just use one resume for all of your applications?
So I tailored my resume. I definitely tailored my cover letter the most, because I was applying to very similar roles, very similar responsibilities, and all of those roles. It was a summer internship, so it was consistent across the board, similar, if not the same. So I was definitely tailoring my cover letters, and then moving things around on my resume. It's not like, oh, deleting a whole bunch of things, but like I was definitely paying attention to that. And I think you've got to when you're seriously applying and not just like cold applying. So yeah,
And thank you for the kind words about career services. I appreciate
absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
So you touched on this just a little bit, but moving into the interview phase, how did you actually prepare for the interview? And then did anything about the interview process surprise you? Understanding that interview processes are different from place to place and change over time, but I'd love your experience.
Yeah. Um, I would say with my interview, I definitely got very lucky with the recruiter. He's the nicest person, and very friendly and easy to talk to, as I would say most recruiters are, because they want you to tell them about yourself. So definitely go into those conversations just, we're just chatting. It's the first conversation. It helps take that pressure off a little bit. I know it did for me. But with my interview, one thing that I always like to do is have a very, very detailed version of my resume pulled up next to me. So not only do I know where the questions may be coming from, because that's what they have access to, but also like how much detail can I go into? I'm not forgetting any points. I'm not forgetting those numbers. And having that pulled up in front of me really helps me. But of course, like even, and like the more you look at it, the more you talk about your resume, even if it's like an in-person interview, you know what you're talking about more and more. So it's it's good not to just like, a lot of times like and I used to do that like I would put my resume together and never look at it until whenever. And you need to read what your resume says, like repeat it and like go into detail. So really like knowing my resume in and out helped me. And again, going back to like having those conversations with the career services also pushed for that. But yeah, with my interview, again, like I think I was very lucky with my recruiter. We're still in touch. It was a very, getting to know each other, conversational style of interview. It was a phone interview. And yeah, there weren't any like crazy questions, I would say. Just something I think is like good about like Navy Federal is like they definitely want their employees to be happy, or even at an internship level. So one question I would say like I didn't necessarily see coming for an internship was like pay expectation. I was like, oh, like that's cool that you're even asking for an internship. But other than that, I wouldn't say there were very many crazy questions, but it was just a conversational style, I would say. So
Excellent. Those can be fun sometimes.
yeah.
So you had your internship. How did you leverage that into a full-time position? How did you kind of move through that process? And then I'm gonna just tack on at the end because a lot of our students are interested, whether your experience personally or what you've encountered kind of out there in the working world now. I'm interested in your thoughts about the sponsorship issue. But if you could start with kind of moving from the part-time internship phase into a full-time, that'd be helpful.
Yeah. I would say that from the very beginning, from my first conversation with my recruiter, I was sharing information about one, being an international student. Believe it or not, not everyone is as familiar or with the issue. It's like the center of our attention in our world, but that's not the case for everyone out there. So from the get go, I was very like, informative, and as much information that I had, I was providing that. And I was also communicating my goal with the internship. It was definitely to keep working, keep getting that experience that was relevant for in my field, what I was studying and all that, but also like eventually maybe have that opportunity to work full time. So I was definitely always hitting on that ultimately that is the end goal. I want to keep working here. So how do we make that happen? And what I want to come out of this experience. So I was having those conversations with my recruiter. From the first conversation, I was once I did get the internship, I was having those same conversations with my team leaders and my supervisors during the course of my internship. Definitely the first step is to like prove your worth, do a good job, and able to show like what your skill set, what you're bringing to the team, to the table, and that you're good at your job. But another step, or like parallelly, you need to be communicating your goals and your like what you may think may be a roadblock, which in my case I could see could be the sponsorship issue. So one key thing that I tried to remind myself was not to see it as a roadblock. And because that's how you see it, that's how you're going to talk about it. But you never want to go to someone with problems. You always want to offer solutions with that. So or ideas. And if the conversation is like switched in a sense, like, hey, like this is a thing, we know it's a thing, like sponsorship, like we have to tackle, like how do we go about it? And the conversation then changes to like, oh, this is a problem, I don't know about it, versus, yeah, how do we make it happen? Let me reach out to someone who knows the answer. So changing that narrative a little bit helps. And I definitely want to emphasize more that like you have to first show that like someone wants to work towards that. Why, like, get their buy-in on that, and then you can start having those conversations. But like if you're doing a good job, everyone's happy, you're getting good feedback, then there's no harm in like keeping that open line of communication on, this is where I want to end up, I'm really liking my time here, let's make it work. And the conversation kind of switch. So that's what I would say helped me a lot.
I'm going to slip just an extra little question in here along the same lines. When you were applying for internships,
Mhm.
how did you handle, or how did you see other people handle the international student issue at that earlier time?
Yeah, I was talking to my recruiter and he was like, I've never dealt with it, so tell me more. And I was like, this has been my experience. This is what I will be able to provide you, in terms of like approvals or like OPT or CPT. This is what information I have, and then this is probably who you should um, work with to get the company side of the information, with like the HR, with their international student services, or whatever is in place for the company, or like this is what I need, this is the document I need. So having those answers, having that clarity on your end really helps the person in front of you who has no idea to deal with it. So
That's
having those, yeah.
That's really, really helpful. Thank you. Well, I have asked you all of my questions, and I am so grateful for your Wonderful answers, a lot of information there for people to think about, and a little plug as well for coming to career services, because that's what we talk about all the time. All of the things that
Yeah,
you
no, a big plug, honestly. Like that's how it started. Like the constant push, the constant like, hey, think about it, work on your resume, come to our session. It works. Like it's work. That's why we're still doing it. So definitely take advantage of it.
wonderful. That's a perfect note to end on, and I want to thank you again so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.